Hello. Today it'll get there, is the 11th. It's a Friday. And today we're talking about some of the negative things that happened with our expansion with our manifest destiny. So far we've just focused on, that it happened and that was our destiny. We're supposed to do it. Today, now we're going to focus on a negative aspect of us, the United States, reaching for our manifest destiny and that we're supposed to do this. Vocab word is over here. Indian Removal Act. I love when vocabulary words are to the point and they describe what they're talking about. So an act is literally a law. So it goes through Congress. It has to be signed by the president, just like any other law that we've learned about, or that we ran our bills to law process. So it's a law that gave the president the right to move Native Americans from lands east of the Mississippi to new lands out in newly acquired areas. That Oklahoma region became a prime area where we sent a lot of Native Americans. It kind of began that push for what we'll call later on reservations, what we're familiar with today. So sections of lands that are dedicated for Native Americans that were given to them by treaties, which are contracts way back, almost 150, 200 years ago. So our target today is to explain specific ways that the U.S.'s manifest destiny impacted Native people. So don't just say it impacted it positively or negatively. What are some specific examples that you can give of how it impacted Native American people? That's what I'm looking for. We are going to start with some review and for our quiz that'll be on Tuesday. Don't forget. It's also listed in Schoology as well. But we'll do some vocabulary practice. I'll show you where that's at. We're going to read something and get introduced to a concept called SOAPs. I'll show you what that form looks like. So let's start with the review stuff. For that, we have to be in our Manifest Destiny folder, our current folder of Schoology. So pause my video and get yourself there if you want. And what we started with is doing the Quizlet. So practice those flashcards a couple of times. There's fewer words than there was last time with our government. And this is also why we'll run the vocab with the content of Manifest Destiny. Then there's a practice quiz in there. I'm calling it Westward Expansion. It should probably be Manifest Destiny, but same thing. It's a practice quiz. Go in and take that. Some people asked me today, is this how the quiz is going to look? And my answer was, it's pretty similar, yes. I'm asking you to memorize some stuff, so I'm giving you some practice so you can memorize it. Here is that essay question and a format to work on doing that. That's another thing to practice on. And then we also, so for timeline of class, we took about 5 minutes to do the Quizlet and practice the vocab. We took another 5 minutes to work on the practice quiz. I asked people to leave a tab open so that they would remember to come back to it. This is really your only homework for the next couple of days, is to practice these things, start learning them because it's new information, so you got to practice it. Here's the essay to get ready for that, which will be on Tuesday, which you'll write in class on Tuesday. And then I passed out a review guide. This is a paper copy. If you have access to a printer, you can print it out or just write your answers on a sheet of paper is fine. But this is due. This is going to be due right here, this review guide, on Tuesday before we take the quiz. So they're very similar in all of these. They all kind of encompass the similar things. It's different ways of practicing. You have to do the review guide and turn that in. If you end up spending majority of your time on other stuff, that's perfectly fine, but you have to do the review guide. And that'll be the fourth thing listed. So then we worked on the review guide for about 5 minutes just to make sure you had a good understanding of what you were doing. And then that's homework. So homework for Tuesday. All right. So now on to our actual vocab, our target for today. How were Native people impacted by our manifest destiny? There are some things further down your page. And remember, your page doesn't look exactly like mine because I have some things that I have unpublished that's just for my use or that we aren't using this year or that I modified. So disregard some of the stuff you see that isn't on your page. You're looking for something called the Cherokee removal through the eyes of, and the rest of it is of a soldier. So that, when you click on it, is going to look like this. This is an excerpt from a letter that this John G. Burnett wrote to his children in 1890. And you can read that on your own. Here is a map showing some of the different paths that Cherokee Indians were forced on during this relocation, the Indian Removal Act. And there were 5 civilized tribes a part of this Cherokee Nation, and they all were sent on this path. So there is, and I'll show you where it's at, but you can just see very quickly. I just put together a quick slide of what interesting, unfortunate information, because A Trail of Tears kind of alludes to it not being a good thing. So it happened between 1838 and 1839. So as we're still getting more land, because we haven't had the Mexican-American War yet, we haven't gotten the Gadsden Purchase. So there are some things yet that are still happening out west, but this is in 1838 and 1839. It was about a 1,200-mile journey, and most were sent by land, some were sent by water routes or other routes, but really the focus is this one that's dotted right here. And so they started over here in Tennessee and then moved them over to Oklahoma. And the unfortunate thing is that about a fourth of the people involved in this, from what I found this statistic, about 4,000 of the 15,000 Cherokee died on this march, on this forced march that they were put on. So you're going to read this. This is from the point of view of a soldier, and there's a little information about him at the bottom. After you finish reading it, I had everybody get into groups, and I introduced this SOAPS primary source form, this think sheet. SOAPS stands for subject, purpose, occasion, audience, and speaker. When we look at a primary source document, and by the way, a primary source document is a document written by somebody who was there from their point of view. A secondary source, on the other hand, is like our textbook. It's written by a person or people who were not there, but got their information from people who were there, from sources that were there, or from other secondary sources. So our textbook is a secondary source. The soldier is a primary source. One other example I used in class to tell the difference between these two, you would be a primary source about what was happening in school on a given day because you were there. If you were there. If you're watching this, you maybe weren't here today. But if you were there, you're a primary source. So lunch, think of a day in the lunchroom. If you are talking to a friend about the lunchroom and you were there, you're a primary source. Now, if that friend wasn't there or your parent wasn't there, but they're hearing about it from you, that makes them a secondary source. So being there makes you a primary source. It doesn't always make a primary source better. I hear that occasionally, that primary sources are better. They are better in that it is information from the event. What makes them not always better is down here when we're talking about the purpose of it, and also, so why do you think it was created? What's the specific evidence that helps you? They may have a point of view, like why they're creating something. And we all have a perspective, the way we view things. So when you're at lunch, you may view things different than somebody else. For example, your table may view the lunchroom differently than another table, or a teacher, or the principal, or if your parent came in, they may view it differently. So primary source, we have to think about the point of view. And then we have to think about over here, speaker, who is not being represented in the document that we're looking at. That can definitely change things. So think about that. And I had groups get together, and after we read this, then I had groups work on answering these questions. Now, I have a resource for you if you would like. So here are those things. There's the reading. I actually recorded myself reading this. So if you would like to listen to it instead of reading it personally, you're welcome to do that. Here is the Trail of Tears, just that information. And then here is that SOAPS form for you. It's near, again, the bottom of our current folder. And so that kind of sums up. We did some review of the chapter to help prepare for the quiz, and then we did some reading of primary source and the SOAPS form to see how were Native people impacted by Manifest Destiny through the eyes of a private soldier. Again, just a reminder, the quiz is on Tuesday. We'll be taking the quiz, doing the essay that you already have the information for on our essential question. We'll also be turning in our review guide. So Tuesday's kind of a big day for a lot of stuff. So spend a little time this weekend each day getting prepared for it. If you have questions, let me know. Otherwise, have a great weekend, and we'll hopefully see you on Monday.